Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Soul Frequency Festival. Today, I have a really special guest, Neil Gaur. He is the founder of Portal to Ascension, a conscious event production company created in 2008 that hosts a wide range of presenters on a variety of topics such as the origins of humanity, the existence of extraterrestrial life, exposing hidden truths, and exploring the nature of reality. He travels the world facilitating gatherings that are intended to empower the individual to reclaim their sovereignty and awaken to their full potential. Neil hosts, creates, and facilitates about 70 conferences, workshops, and retreats a year. And at this point, Portal to Ascension has worked with over 300 researchers, spiritualists, scientists, consciousness explorers, and more. And Neil is a philosopher, historian, researcher, and spoken word artist. And he presents his research on the ancient wisdom and future science of sound, vibration, and frequency, as well as in-depth exploration into ancient civilizations, archaeological discoveries, space anomalies, shedding light on hidden esoteric wisdom, and exploring ways in which we can create unity and peace on Earth. And today we are talking about ancient civilizations and what they knew about sound. So, Neil, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Aswaria. Really good to be here with you.
It's so good to have you. So, I mean, you work a lot with just even the extraterrestrial life and the origins of humanity and the nature of reality that, like how we've heard in your bio. So, can
Mhm.
you just open up with the origin of sound and what ancient civilizations knew about sound?
Yeah, well, it's interesting when we say the origin because when we go back to the origin, we go back to a place where time never existed. So the way to even start talking about an origin is to have to start about the paradox, how we're speaking about a beginning when there really was no beginning because all things are sound right now. So, but if you look, when I started this whole journey, I was raised Hindu and I started this whole journey because I was seeing a lot of similarities between Hinduism and other religions. So I went down a search for what I call the root of all religion. I wanted to find out if there was a root. So I began looking through all these origin stories, these ancient civilization texts to see which one was the oldest. And I even put a presentation together where I went through 300 different origin stories, and every single one of them spoke about sound being there in the beginning, and including ones that you couldn't even if you just looked at it face value, you wouldn't maybe even notice that it was speaking about sound. But when you go down to the deeper meaning of it and look behind the words, you can tell that it's something to do with vibration. A good example is John 1:1 in the book of Genesis. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God, right? Many people just think of the Word being God, but what we don't realize here is what a lot of people aren't realizing is the Word is actually representing sound and is saying the word was with God in the beginning and the word was God, introducing the first paradox. So, in my opinion, I feel that everything came from one frequency, one vibration, which is why it's called universe. And we didn't come from light per se, we came from vibration and sound, and then light and darkness was a product of the sound vibration. So, if you consider singularity of the oneness, like the Big Bang story. Even the Big Bang story, the conventional story of the Big Bang, is literally an adjective explaining what happened that is an adjective of sound, Big Bang. Even scientifically, we're talking about that. So if you have this one frequency, right, and this frequency was a singularity, the singularity became a duality. So what I feel happened was that vibration sped up to become light and it slowed down to become darkness. And light and darkness are a product of sound. And therefore, everything within physical reality really goes back to the fact that we're sound. And case in point on that one is quantum physics. We
Mhm.
used to think that everything was Newtonian physics and everything was made out of small particles called an atom. But now we realize that everything's made out of subatomic particles that are constant vibrations that are vibrating in and out of reality and has no solidity to it. So we're now able to prove through science that everything around us is vibration, but we're perceiving it as different. We're perceiving it as solid. So there's another paradox there. So having this understanding now that not only did we come from sound, but we're still sound, it's almost like there's an illusion or a Maya that has been imposed on us for us to see the world differently than what it really is. And this is some core information that, ancient civilizations knew about for quite some time. And because we haven't been at that conscious that they were at for quite a while, we haven't been able to recognize the greatness and the genius of the level of understanding that these ancient civilizations had. But now, through like research that we're doing and other people, we're starting to get to that level again, and just we have a whole world open to us, a whole new opportunity in front of us when we start understanding and embodying the concept that everything is vibration.
Exactly. So how have some of the ancient civilizations used sound, you know, in healing or just to awaken altered states of consciousness? Or is there anything you can tell us from your research?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of civilizations, including in Egypt, in Malta, in Peru. When they speak about how these megalithic structures were put into place, a lot of the stories are through levitation, right? So we have that one for sure that's around the world. Levitation stories, also stories of giants helping put them in place. But if you go into like, first of all, we'll talk about Egypt, for example. If you go to Egypt and you go into the Giza Plateau and into one of the pyramids in the Giza Plateau, you literally feel like you're walking inside of an instrument, a musical instrument. There's one pyramid in Egypt called the Red Pyramid, and you go in there, and people have done studies on this, and including people that I work with, where you go in this pyramid and you just start chanting, right? You can chant whatever, and obviously, when you chant, you don't know what note you're hitting. You're just chanting, and whatever comes out comes out. The pyramid is designed in a way to take all the chants, all the frequencies that you make in there, and shift the note to A equals 432 hertz. So you could be singing off key, you could be singing an F note, but the structure of the pyramid is designed to funnel the frequency and change the note to A equals 432 hertz, right? And it's been tested with guitar tuners, with keyboards. They've tested it and it does this no matter what, right? And then the major pyramid on the Giza Plateau, it's, these pyramids were used for many different things, but definitely designed with acoustics in mind. And so the major pyramids on the Giza Plateau, they have aqueducts underneath the pyramid. Okay. The Nile River used to be located on the other side of the pyramids, not where it is now. But through geological, over erosion and over time, the Nile River has moved. What would happen is every few seasons, the Nile would overflow and fill up the aqueducts under the pyramids. The pyramids have a copper rod going from the pyramids into the aqueduct, right? And they've discovered all this stuff already. So what would happen is the aqueducts would fill up with water, create an electrical current because the aqueducts are going under there. The electricity would go into the copper rods. The copper rods would go into the pyramids and end into a hollowed out tube, turning the electricity into a sound frequency going into the king's chamber inside the pyramid, right? So that's just one aspect of it all, because also it seemed like it was taking the hydrogen and extracting the hydrogen using sound from the water, creating some sort of device to cultivate hydrogen. And we know that hydrogen is the most predominant element in our entire universe, and it's the best type of it's the best thing to utilize in order to communicate along great distances throughout space, which now goes into the whole questioning of were these pyramids used as communication devices to other planets, or maybe even transportation to other planets as well, right? So that's just one out of many different elements that we see in Egypt in regards to, the use of sound. These guys was extremely genius. Like everything there was designed intentionally, from the distance from one pyramid to another, one structure to another, even the positioning of the hieroglyphs on the pyramids. They're exactly a certain amount of like inches from the ground based on a calculation that they wanted us to know. So it's kind of like, I'll give you an example, and this is talking about Egypt, not really about sound, but a good example is that if you see the an image of Thoth anywhere in Egypt, Thoth is always holding his staff at the same angle, right? And if you find out what that angle is 23.5 degrees, which is the tilt of the Earth's axis, right? So even the minute pieces of information, right, are just so genius. And so that's one example. I can jump over to some other ones if I want, but I'll hand it back to you for a second.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to, is there any have you found a reason for why A equals 432 hertz? I mean, we all know about
Yeah.
432 hertz, or some of us do, but why A?
So well, why A? That's you gotta. We'd have to ask God for that one,
Yeah,
to be
I just
honest.
wondered if, if
Why
you
God
knew.
said it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I can give you some of the history that includes Pythagoras. So basically, after the Big Bang, there was an oscillation throughout the universe. And the oscillation was the Ohm sound, right? So Ohm is A equals 432. So Ohm is the sound technically of the 432 hertz. And so why it was put as the original frequency, I'm not sure. But that is supposed to be the sound of creation, the sound of all things manifest, the exhaling breath of God, basically, right? Now, 432 hertz equaling A was then embedded in all types of civilizations around the world. Egypt, for example, we see it all over the place in the structures. Even the circumference of the pyramid, 432,000, right? And then we also see in Babylonian texts, we see this number being repeated. They don't tell us the root of it all. They just tell us the discovery of this mathematics. But then we see all of a sudden this information was lost to time for thousands of years. And then this guy comes on the scene named Pythagoras. And Pythagoras, at age 3, he was born in an island called Croton in off the coast of Anatolia that was back in those days, it was technically a part of Greece. But when he was 3 years old, he left and went around the world with his dad, who was a merchant. Before he even became fully Greek, like initiated into the Greek gods, he had already visited the Zoroastrians. He had already visited India. His dad would take him to all these places and initiate him into the local culture and religion. He'd actually, by the time he was 6, 7, he'd been sitting with the Brahmins in North India, right? And he was learning all this information, and he was extracting little pieces of information of sound and vibration and geometry from around the world. Because what had happened is we had devolved in consciousness from Egypt. As we devolved in consciousness, a lot of this information that was just a part of our society and civilization had been lost or fragmented into multiple civilizations. Babylon had some, Mesopotamia, India had some information, Egypt has some information. Because of Pythagoras, he went around the world and he started getting all this information and compiling it in order to create what we now know as modern day geometry and also sound medicine. The chakra scale, A equals 432 hertz, that we currently use, was rediscovered and implemented into mainstream society by Pythagoras. So the original source of why it happened, who knows? God, something occurred in the universe. But the reason why that we know it now and we brought it back is because Pythagoras went around the world and put together a working piece of information for us not only to be able to create structures, bridges, and all that, but also to understand the music scale. The music scale that we currently have is 100% because of Pythagoras. So the reason why you have chakra bowls, right? All these different notes of these chakra bowls. Well, if it wasn't for Pythagoras, maybe someone else would have discovered it. Chakra tuning forks. All the tuning forks on the scale are all because of what Pythagoras rediscovered as well.
Wow. Wow. Okay. So tell us about a few other ancient civilizations as well.
All right. So one thing I find extremely interesting is that a lot of these civilizations, even without even without making sound in that structure, they still emanate a frequency with the wind, right? And this is Egypt, the caves in Malta, right? It's Palenque, which is in Mexico, Mayan site, Uxmal, which is in the Yucatan Peninsula. They just the wind. You can go to these sites and you'll see that they've created certain windows that aren't just windows, but they're wind tunnels. And these wind tunnels, when the wind goes through them, they funnel the wind in a specific way that then just vibrates within the actual structure. Another good one is Hampi, India, and I'll break down a few of these right now. So we can only perceive and hear a certain bandwidth of frequency. For every one of our senses, we can only perceive a specific frequency bandwidth visually, smell, taste, all that stuff, right? So we're talking about sound here. So within sound, we can only do that too. However, because we're modern and scientific enough nowadays, we know that there's frequencies we cannot perceive or feel or hear. And what occurs is what we've noticed is when someone plays, say they play B note, F note, A note, whatever, that every corresponding note in the higher octaves that we cannot hear are also triggered. So hitting one note here hits every note. And this is also peer-reviewed information. This is conventionally accepted. So if you look at it this philosophically, think about what's happening. One note here is literally creating harmonics of the same note in higher octaves all the way to where? To source, to the original creation? Is it almost like a relay switch of experience where we experience anything here and then it triggers every octave, relaying information back to source? And if you think of us as all sound experiencing ourselves, technically everything we do is hitting a note, right? Because we are vibration manifest in physicality, right? So we're clocking in those experiences. So these structures were created in a way where the wind would come in and it would trigger a note on an inaudible frequency that would then trigger all the notes in the higher octaves, right? And the reason why they know this is because we're able to have other devices that can perceive frequencies we can't. A good example are dogs. Dogs can hear a dog whistle. We know it's working. We can gauge that it's working, but we can't perceive it. So the structures that I'll tell you about in Malta, in the caves in Malta, it's and the one in County Meath, Ireland. So County Meath, Ireland is this big structure there that dates back 7,000 years. And also in Malta, there's these caves that are probably one of the biggest smoking guns for our ancient civilizations. Now, in these two caves, the frequency of the wind, and if you went in there enchanted, and it would just make this frequency anyway, is 110 hertz. 110 hertz, right? And we see there's even a documentary on YouTube. If you type in 110 hertz documentary, specifically about all the ancient sites that have been designed in a way to emanate 110 hertz. So the first thing is you got to be tripped out because imagine if I was the like a pharaoh or something, and you were the architect, and I said, "Hey, create this structure. Just use hands and levitation or whatever you have. And when you're done with the structure, you need to make sure that the way you put these stones together creates this frequency, right? It's like in our understanding right now, that's impossible. So what would you need? You would need to visualize it multidimensionally, and you would already need to see what the outcome is before you could even start it. You need to know how it's going to look when it ends before that to happen, right? And then the other thing is they did studies on 110 hertz frequency. And the part of your brain that's responsible for visual creativity and out of the part of the brain that also gets stimulated through out of body experiences and astral travel actually gets amplified. So there was an organization, a mainstream organization called the Archaeoacoustics Organization. They are acoustic scientists, sound scientists, and archaeologists coming together. They went around these sites, they found these frequencies, and then they put these frequencies on their brain and in an artificial setting. And they started getting out of body experiences and visualizing themselves outside their body. And when they did this inside of the cave, some of them saw themselves actually reflected on the cave drawings that were made thousands of years ago. So what was occurring was it was almost like a frequency designed to help you connect to other realms, or definitely a frequency designed to connect to other realms. Later in the evolution of humanity, as we devolved from consciousness, those sites started being used as burial chambers. And the theory is behind that is that the frequency in that burial chamber had such a history with these civilizations that they believed that if you were to put your dead bodies in there, the frequency had already created a portal to other dimensions. So it was easier for your body to travel in that area to another dimension, which is also why some structures ended up being used as tombs. They weren't originally tombs. They were used as tombs later because of the sacred essence of that space, and they believed it was just a way to assist the soul to go to the afterlife.
That is phenomenal. Could you tell us a little bit about the Indian sound and Indian
Yeah,
culture?
that one's really cool. So Hampi, India, right? Because were you raised Hindu, by the way?
Yeah, yeah.
All right, so we'll have a little fun with this one. So the the story of Hampi, India goes back Could you give me a second? Because I have a little cold. I have a little cold. Need to blow my nose.
Sure.
Okay, so the place called Hampi, India, is in South India, and it dates back a very long time because the story goes that Shiva and Rama, well, the reincarnation of Shiva, Hanuman, and Rama actually met in Hampi, India. And even though there's a lot of information to show that the land bridge, for those of you who don't know, I'll tell you the story in a second. But the land bridge that Hanuman had created from India to Lanka, which people consider Sri Lanka, was from the tip of India all the way to Sri Lanka. And the reason why you can see that is because through satellite images, you see huge slabs under the water that look like that something was created there. The story of where it all began was in Hampi, India, and the stones that were picked up by Hanuman were there. And for those listening who probably don't know the story, I'll just give you a 1 minute synopsis just so I can tie it into what's happening there now or what occurred there later. Is Rama and Sita. Rama was one of the prophets of India. He was a reincarnation of Vishnu, and Sita was the reincarnation of Vishnu's wife. These are like some of the main gods. There's three main gods in Hinduism. There's Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Shiva, Rama came down to earth to help eradicate some type of evil that had manifested on earth, and gods usually do that, right? Case in point on that is Jesus, Yeshua. It's the same story, kind of. And Shiva decided to come down with Vishnu in order to assist, but Shiva reincarnated into a different hominid species that existed on the planet at the time that had more monkey features, and the god that he manifested into was Hanuman. So they met in Hampi, India, and basically they trekked their way down all the way to Sri Lanka to save Vishnu's reincarnation, Rama's wife, on the island of Sri Lanka because Ravana, the demon god, had taken her captive while he was exiled in the forest. Okay, that's the story. Now we fast forward. So thousands of years later, there's this group of people called the Shivites that are basically out of Hampi, India, and they were the Shiva worshippers. But there was also, I forget the name for them now, the Vishnu worshippers, which was a sect of ancient Hinduism that was specifically worshiping Vishnu. They joined forces in Hampi, India, and they created a new sect that was Vishnu and Shiva worshiping. They created this they created this structure, these temples in Hampi, India, that worshipped a god called Vitala. Vitala. Vitala is half Shiva, half Vishnu. And you look it up, it looks like the Black Madonna. It's like all black, but it's half Vishnu, half Shiva. It has the drum that Shiva has, it has the conch that Vishnu has. Both of those emanate Om 432 hertz frequencies, the ones to the sound of the drum, once just through the sound of the conch. Now, all that was the pretext to this story. So there is one main temple inside Hampi, India, and in that temple, the pillars are called the musical pillars of Rangtapa, because each of these pillars. So imagine like just a temple with different pillars on it. Each of these pillars emanate frequencies when you play them. So it's just like think of like a Greek temple with those pillars, very similar in that. But when you go up to those pillars and you start tapping on them, each one of them is designed to be a different instrument, string instruments, tablas. So when you play the pillar, you could play it like you're playing an Indian drum. You can play it like you're playing a musical instrument, right? But the even more interesting component of it all is that they all go with the Saregama scale from the root chakra to the crown chakra, hitting the frequencies of the root to the crown. So you start at the bottom, it's the root chakra sound. You go all the way to the top, it's the crown chakra sound. Different pillars looking the exact same, different instrumental sounds, all with the frequencies of your chakras. And when you're in that, if it rains, if there's wind, no matter what, it's continuously playing the sound inaudibly. So imagine in the ancient days going into this temple and meditating and praying, but the frequency of the wind or the rain is literally is activating all those pillars, therefore giving you a full chakra bath at the same time, right? When the British went there, So first of all, in 1400s when there was the Islamic invasion into Hampi, India, that's when it got shut down. And then when the British went there a few hundred years later, the British were really like they were tripped out. They were really wanting to know what was going on. So they took one of the pillars and they cut it open, and they took another pillar and cut it open, and all of them inside looked exactly the same, just stone and rock. They could not tell how these stone structures were engineered to emanate these frequencies and play like instruments. Yeah.
Still digesting that one.
Very
Yeah,
amazing. If you go
yeah.
on YouTube, anybody, and type in Hampi India musical pillars, you'll see people playing those pillars there. And you don't need to look too far to just see the great anomalies of our ancient past. And there's so many things that we can't even replicate today and we don't understand. So it's like, what level of consciousness do you have to be at in order to be able to create something like that?
That is amazing. And it's also the technology, the sound technology is just so far advanced. And I think that we're in a time where,
Exactly.
of course, through people like you, Neil, and others, we're learning, we're starting to connect and open our consciousness to these technologies so we can also, evolve ourselves and evolve what we're doing with sound too and add to that one day in our own way. So thank you so much. You're such a fountain of knowledge. I know that you go all around the world and talk. So if anyone wants to see Neil, of course, you can be part of his community through all the links that we'll put down below. His website, portaltoascension.org, Instagram, Facebook. And you also have a really special free gift for everyone, which is the Truth, Life, and Times of Pythagoras.
Yes.
Do you want to just tell us a little bit about that gift?
Sure. So, just doing this work for so long and facilitating thousands of events and presentations, I've noticed for a while that the name Pythagoras would come up quite often. And I spoke a little bit about him today. And people will say, like, because, we know him as the founder of geometry, but he was actually looking for the frequency of God. His whole entire the reason why he did what he did was he was looking for vibration and frequencies to heal the passions of the psyche, lust, anger, greed. There was dictatorship in his time. He wanted to see if there was a frequency to heal the traumas behind why people do what they do. Okay. And because of that, looking for sound and frequency, he then accidentally stumbled on the visual component geometry, which then became the building blocks of how we literally create society. Okay. And so since I've been so fascinated with him, he even said that he even speculated that all the planets make sounds and frequencies and have their own songs, which now proven in the last 20 years. So because I had heard so much of this, I decided to do a deep dive on him for a few years and do an expose on his life, a 3 hour expose of literally the truth, life, and times of Pythagoras, meaning that what was his actual intention? Why did he do what he did? How did he discover what he discovered? Where did he get it from? We talk about his time in India, his time with the Zoroastrians in Mesopotamia, and all of this. And then we go into what was happening in Greek times in those moments as well. So it's very fun. It's fun, interesting, and expansive presentation because not only does it talk about ancient Greece and what's going on then, but it also talks about the building blocks of how we rediscovered sound. And if it wasn't for him, a lot of what we have in the world today, including the way we live, including the way we do sound healing, wouldn't exist. So it's a really deep dive on his life, including fun things like why was he vegan? He was the only vegan in Greece at that time. People hated him. They didn't understand why he didn't eat meat. So we go into deep things just like that.
Amazing. So we'll put that link down below. And Neil, you also are going to do a spoken word for us today. Um,
Yes.
do you want to tell us a little bit about that as well?
Sure. So today I'm gonna do a spoken word piece called "The Journey to Ascension," and I started writing poetry when I was 16, and then in 2008 I started doing it at open mics. And what I do with my poetry, I create hip hop as well and light language tracks, and what I found out in my early days writing this is that I was learning so much information that the best way to convey this information was through music. So the poems are really like a journey. I have some poems, for example, that are about quantum physics and the black holes and things like that. And this one in particular is about the reincarnation cycle and going through it over and over again, and the ultimate goal, I guess, which is nirvana.
Amazing. Well, I will hand it over to you, but I just want to really thank you for being here with us and for all the work that you do. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Okay.
Of course.
All right. So everybody, let's just take a moment here. Take a few breaths in and out. Deep breath in. Let it go. Deep breath in. Let it go. Another deep breath in. The road goes on for generations. The travelers will disperse their light amongst all the willingly incarnated souls. But what if the ones that didn't know? Amnesia of the internal endowment to reserve a place in the fifth dimension for themselves. The ego took control. And a better life? They shall never know. I welcome you, Dark One, to the lap of luxury followed by pain and woes. We all sold our souls to the devil. But the devil exists not. Negative energy we dub as evil creates the demons of whom we are fearful. Take the D from the demon, put it in front of the word evil, and now you have a personified devil. Our thoughts and experiences create this creature only exists in the mind. Our desires and wants creates this full-featured ego that keeps the lower self from reaching the divine. Intellect. Love, love, love. We have with one another. I welcome you, my brother, my sister, my lover, to become one, to help me become one, before reality turns me from duality and back into ether's imagination. You see, I'm the ghost of lives past. Generations have descended just to gain these experiences. And I pray the human situation is critical, mind analytical. Won't let me forget the fall of angels and demons into this third dimensional world. Is this planet yours? May I hide amongst the lost souls? Hide out for a bit, drink some liquor, smoke some weed, and step aside for a cigarette? Yeah, sure. Here's a social security card. You may live. Reincarnate to a kid to live and give back to the society when I'm locked in board as I smolder, but through the ashes comes a horde of abstract thought. Who is not a ghost, a spirit, but just is. An enlightened individual. Equality minus elitist political gold, the cynical flow of the pain and woes, and shamanistic pagan rituals. We will resurrect the Messiah in all of us. It's time to trust our brothers and sisters. Unity of mind, consciousness, awareness on the rise, the yin yang intertwined, masculine, feminine lovers intertwined, spit worse than the chakra points in my spine, relentless but still fine, inner peace holds down the pace of my corrupted mind, chemtrails, aspartame, fluoride, getting drunk to high to block the constant question of why am I really here? But now I know is to help humanity steer into the right direction. For every single one of you, I feel affection. We're in the same situation. So erase the awkward moments, trying to walk around and get that bonus. Remember, the Arcturians will be one of the group of interdimensional beings in the near future. The mass landings will help us really. One of the group of interdimensional beings in the near future through mass landings will help our souls really breathe, breathe, breathe. So raise your frequency if this is what you want to see. And don't try to break free from the shackles of captivity that we formed in our own mentality, because you and I, we are, and we've always been free. Inakuwa na asia na koa na kia na koa. Ufa na ya na katia na koa na kisina ka. Ia no kieta na fuku. And before we close out, take a deep breath in. I'm just going to do one small little piece to close it out. Meditate and levitate. Waves of frequencies resonate higher. I'm connected to the provider, source of cosmic energy. We're going to be one single entity, expansion remedied, Oneness must breathe. Exhale and let free. Consciousness to be. Experiences of you and me. Souls of interdimensional beings to feel, hear, and see this third dimensional planetary existence. All time, all time, all time can be found in one instance. In his realm of linearity, atoms in anarchy, quantum polarity, the epitome of creation. Facing our egos, acquiring patience. Waiting to let go of our nations and join the federation of souls that will take us to the fifth world and join the federation of souls that will take us to the fifth world and join the federation of souls that will take us to the fifth world. Deep, deep inhale, belly breath in. Let it go. Om Atman, Om Atman, Om Atman. Thank you, everybody.